The Red Gold and Bold podcast is live here on a Friday. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation, be a part of the live broadcast in the chat room. I got a lot of folks lined up. We go live Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Central, although that's going to change a little bit. We'll talk about that later on. I'm going to go a little bit early because we got Election Day coming up next week. Fridays, we go at 10 a.m. and always a lot to cover as we get ready for the Chiefs and Bucs coming up on Monday Night Football. What kind of challenge do the Bucs present these Kansas City Chiefs? No Evans, no Godwin. Are they still a threat? At what point do we seriously start talking about an undefeated season? Who are the biggest threats to this team? What kind of reaction do we have to the timelines that are being laid out for Pacheco and Omenihu? Is Spagnuolo the best assistant in the NFL? Does Mahomes deserve to be in the MVP race? And, of course, we will give you our predictions on this game between the Chiefs and Bucs. It's coming up right now on the Red Gold and Bold podcast.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeffri Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is the sports columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it. Get with Dave and he'll have you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call, visit them online, or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave. He'll give you peace of mind today for the things in your life most important to you. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeffri Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. And we do have a lot of ground to cover and a short amount of time to do it. So let's dive right in, Jeff. Let's start with what kind of challenge you think these Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be for the Kansas City Chiefs. No Godwin, no Evans. The Chiefs obviously trying to figure out how they're going to play without Jalen Watson. Is this just what the doctor ordered?
Yeah, you know what? This is one of the teams when I was making predictions before the season, I thought they would lose to. I like their offensive firepower. So without Godwin and Evans, I think it's a big uphill battle for the Buccaneers. But I imagine it will still be a close game because the Chiefs have been playing close games all year long. I would imagine that the Buccaneers will do a lot of short passing. They'll try to work the tight end a lot. They've got a good tight end in Cade Otton. They've got two good running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and Rashad White and Bucky Irving. And Baker Mayfield's pretty good with his back against the wall. I wouldn't pick him to win the game, the Bucs, but I imagine that they will probably put up a pretty good fight.
Yeah, that is one thing they have, Sam, is they have a tight end that's been really good, and that has been a problem for the Chiefs to stop. It's a lot easier when you maybe don't have the same kind of threats at wide receiver, but what do you think the challenges are here for this Bucs team?
Yeah, I mean, they've become a lot better at defending the tight end. I think now their DVOA and defending the tight ends like 14th in the league. They've improved drastically since those first 2 weeks. But the most interesting thing to me when I look at a quarterback without their top wide receivers is like, what's the best sort of safety net they have? And to me, the best safety net that Baker Mayfield has is he's the second least pressured quarterback in the league. And so if you're without your wide receivers, I think the number one thing you need is more time for the other guys to get open because they don't get open as quickly. And there's the opportunity for that. So I still think it's Steve Spagnuolo is probably going to blitz a lot. You know, Baker Mayfield, when you look at his passing numbers, they're really good against the blitz. In fact, he's got the second best quarterback rating or second best completion percentage. He's got 126 quarterback rating against the blitz. But there's some deception when you just look at his passing numbers, because where Baker Mayfield struggles is he takes a lot of sacks when he's pressured. I think it's like 28% of his pressures become sacks. And so I still think that a guy without his top wide receivers the other guys probably need extra time to get open, that we're going to see Steve Spagnuolo dial up some things that make him uncomfortable in the backfield.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think, Spags will have some tricks, and I think without having to worry as much about, what's going on with the wide receivers, I think it gets a little bit easier for him maybe to come after him. And I think the question is, can they get the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hand? In other words, force fumbles and or get the interceptions, because the takeaways have been the part that have kind of been lagging behind, even though statistically speaking, they're not giving up yards. And I'll point this out about just how good the Bucs are, Jeff. I mean, wins over the Commanders, the Lions, that's a pretty damn good win.
On the road, yeah.
Yeah, the Eagles and the Saints, their 4 losses, the Broncos, twice by the Falcons, home and road, and to the Ravens. So what like –
they have, sorry to interrupt, Soren, just to point people out, that's the hardest schedule in the NFL this year so far.
Yeah. Has to be.
Yeah, the Falcons are good. The Ravens are good. The Saints can be good at times. They were early in the year. They haven't been of late, but but beating the Lions and Commanders. I mean, the Commanders have proven to be a pretty good team. So is this one of the best teams in the NFC that, like, when their schedule softens up, because after the Chiefs, they've got Niners, but then at Giants, at Panthers, Raiders, at Chargers, at Cowboys, Panthers, Saints. Is this a team that we're going to see go on a run and be a playoff team? Or are they just kind of a salty 9-8 team that's going to be watching on TV when the playoffs start?
Well, losing Godwin is a big hit. But when Godwin and Evans were healthy, certainly they felt like they were a team that could do a lot of things offensively. And I think they're still like a top 5 scoring team, even without those guys healthy the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, they'll be in the mix. I mean, it's the NFC, so there's a lot of teams that are scuffling along, and they're one of them. But the big problem they have is on defense. So they have not been very effective getting after the quarterback. They're not very effective on the back end. The cornerback, they lost Jamel Dean to an injured reserve, so he's out. The pass rush that we saw in the Super Bowl a few years back is now Joe Trianko, Shanko, whatever his name is, and Yael Darby, and these guys have 3 sacks between them. So there'll be time to throw the football for sure.
Yeah, and that could play right into the Chiefs' hands. Sam, I know we'll get to our predictions a little bit later on, but we mentioned it. No wide receivers to go against Jalen Watson, or at least 2 of their best wide receivers, 2 of the better wide receivers in football, down to go against Jalen Watson. And if no pass rush, that's where the Chiefs have been susceptible, right? As Patrick Mahomes having to get out of Dodge. And we saw Wanya Morris really struggle in that third quarter against the Raiders. So, again, they're a tough team, but are they a bad matchup? Is this a bad matchup for the Bucs? A great matchup for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's other elements that we'll get to in the prediction that also, lend itself to believe that it's a pretty good matchup for the Chiefs. But look, Baker Mayfield's had a good season. I think the fact that he leads the league in interceptions probably, I just think that stuff is overblown. He also leads the league in touchdowns. It's like a Jameis Winston-like season down there in Tampa. But the Bucs not only have played the hardest schedule in the NFL, they have the easiest schedule remaining in the NFL, and that includes having to travel to Kansas City on a Monday night. So I do think that the Bucs are one of the better teams in the NFC. This isn't the healthy Bucs team, though. I mean, Chris Godwin, they're not going to have the rest of the year. They will get Mike Evans back at some point, which is another reason to what you said, Soren. Like, it's not the worst time in the world to be catching this team, because most teams that catch this team are going to be having to face Mike Evans.
It's not just who you play, it's when you play them. And this is, we talk all the time about, you come into a season and maybe be a 9-8 team, but if injuries smile on you and the schedule smiles on you, this is an example of the schedule smiling. Catching a team when they're down players, then, you can boost that record. They are getting a little bit of the best of the opportunity here with the Bucs. My question would be, coming off the Raiders, which I don't get a sense that division games are a big hype for the Chiefs these days. But coming off the Raiders and looking ahead to the Broncos, any chance for a letdown look ahead situation, that this is a trap game, Jeff, or does Monday Night Football I'm also a believer that undefeated teams die hard. And so when you get out to where it's a pronounced talked about thing, that you fight harder to keep that going. And so that gives you a little bit more juice in the tank to try to keep that rolling. Not that you're trying to go undefeated. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but just that when you're undefeated, you like being undefeated. And you're more cognizant and more, I think, less likely to let down. But the Bucs are a conference game. If you're going to lose one, this is one you'd rather lose. Do you see it as a trap game at all, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm not a big trap game believer. I think there's games where you underestimate your opponent, but I don't think there's a look ahead vibe to the NFL. I think that this is this is the kind of game that I could see the Chiefs losing just because of the dynamics involved in it. Like they are out to 7-0. The Bucs are beat up. They beat the Raiders, but the Raiders game was 17-13 with the Raiders having the ball inside the 5-yard line in the third quarter. And if you give too many teams those opportunities, they'll cash them in. See the Jets last night against Texans. I mean, it's like that's a game that probably the Jets should have lost, but enough things happened that went against the Texans that the Jets wound up winning the game. And so, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they lost the game, but it wouldn't be because that there's faults or there's warts. I think it's just life in the NFL. I think it'd be like the Colts game 2 years ago or the Raiders game last year. I think sometimes that happens.
Trap game, Sam, you put any credence into that?
No, I really don't. But, you know, I mean, I said it 2 weeks ago on this podcast. Like, I do think the Chiefs for a 7-0 team probably have a lower floor than most teams that start 7-0. And I think the Bucs are a good team. And so I think they've got some guys that could cause some matchup problems. And Vita Vea is a terrific interior defensive lineman. Baker Mayfield's playing well. I still think Baker Mayfield carries the reputation of the guy who was playing in Cleveland, but he's significantly better than that player. So yeah, the Bucs can give some teams some trouble, but I don't think it would be because, you know, it's where this game falls in the schedule.
All right, a lot more we want to get to here on the Red Gold and Bold podcast. We'll talk about that undefeated season, whether or not it's time to do it. First, it's time to talk about our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gay and Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Get your seal coating done now before the weather turns cold. Weekends are booking up fast. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk about it. Jeff, I've been bringing it up, I think, since 1-0. You wanted to wait a little longer about talking about an undefeated season. I don't see why you wouldn't get that conversation going the moment you have the opportunity. When, in your mind, is it time to seriously discuss the Chiefs going undefeated? Because this week was the week that nationally it started to become a conversation, at least on the talking head shows. When do you think it's okay?
After Buffalo or after Denver. You know, I'm with Sam on this. 7-0 is impressive, but it's been a tightrope walking 7-0. It hasn't been like when you talk about teams going undefeated, and the last team to do it was the only team to do it in I guess the Dolphins did, but the Patriots in 2007. That team was beating teams by 20 points every week, and they were loaded on offense and defense, and they were healthy, and their quarterback was on a mission, and their coach was determined to prove this whole Spygate thing wasn't a thing. It's like those factors aren't involved here. This feels a lot more like, and I'm not suggesting that this is going to happen, they're going to have a meltdown, but this feels more like the Philadelphia Eagles 10-0 start or whatever it was, 8-0 last year, when second half of the season they started to have some struggles and things didn't really work out for them. This team is really good. I don't expect them to fall apart, but there's a lot of teams that could beat this team, and I don't think they're going undefeated.
First of all, Sean said pound the like button. Yeah, and as Todd mentioned earlier, it doesn't cost nothing, so go ahead and do that. We would appreciate that. And I love this, Tina. I hate the undefeated talk. I don't know what. Come on, Tina. Come on, get with the program here. You said it doesn't feel that strong, and I will grant you, we've given the stats. They've won 13 games and haven't scored more than 28 points. That's never been done before. I think it was 9 games is the most anyone's ever gone that long, scoring 28 or less and putting together a win streak. But Jason Anderson, friend of the program, and host of The Zone from 10 to 2 on Sports Radio 810 WHB, compiled these numbers. The Chiefs have trailed in the fourth quarter for a total of 9 minutes and 28 seconds all year. They've had a 10-plus point lead in the fourth quarter in 4 of their 7 games. Since week 3, the defense has been on the field protecting a 1-score lead for a total of 3 possessions. And in those 3 possessions, the Chargers went 3 and out and punted. The Chargers got 1 first down and punted, and Vegas had 2 plays and fumbled. 3 possessions, 10 plays, 2 punts, 1 turnover, 19 total yards when they've been within a score in the last since week 3. So they have not trailed in the fourth quarter since week 3. So
just since week 3, just 4 games.
4 games. Well, I mean, that's more than half the season. But I mean,
but if we're talking about a team going undefeated, that's less than a quarter of a full season, and they've had
but they
3
did win
possessions.
They did win the other 3 games. The narrative, the point of it is, I agree. I think the opinion is that the Chiefs are just sliding by. Jeff said walking a tightrope. Okay, so I don't bring it up to say this has been the most dominant force in the history of the National Football League. I open with the fact that they haven't even gotten to 30 points. It's clearly not the most dominant force in the history of the National Football League. But I think that is the feeling. That is the sentiment that they are walking a tightrope, and they certainly have not walked a tightrope for the last 4 weeks. I think there's
but the competition has been lesser though the last 4 weeks.
I mean, if you add up the whole season, they had to, the Ravens game, we know how that game ended. The Bengals game, we know how that game ended. The Falcons game, they needed to stop in the last 2 minutes.
Which were
the Chargers game, they needed to stop in the last 2 minutes, and the Raiders game, they were getting ready to lose at the onset of the fourth quarter. Like that is some cherry picking endpoints there.
I disagree. First of all, they won by 7 points over the Chargers, and so needing that's the whole thing. Is like, what do you supposed? Do you have to win by 21 points every single game to be a good team? Because
to be an undefeated team,
yeah. There's a major gap between good and undefeated, and that's the gap we're talking about right now.
Yeah. So you subscribe to the theory that the Bills and the Ravens are better teams because they have a couple of big wins where they pile it on against lesser teams.
That's not what we're saying.
No.
We're saying if you're setting the bar for being undefeated,
yes,
generally to have that conversation, you better be a dominant team where you're legitimately better than every team you're playing.
Let me add a different stat without selective endpoints on it. I mean, in just 5 of the last 6 years alone, there's been teams that have started better than 7-0.
Yeah.
In 1 year, there's 2. So we've had 6 teams that have faced this spot in the last 6 years where they're at least 7-0. All 6 of those teams lost at least 3 games over the remaining 10 games of the season. This is not unusual for a team to start 7-0. We haven't even seen a team get to 1 loss or even get to 2 losses in that situation. They've all lost at least 3 games. I mean,
how many of them? But Sam, how many?
We're a long way away from talking about undefeated.
How many of them? The question is not like. See, I think the line gets blurred of talking about it versus predicting it, right? And I think there are a lot of people that don't want to talk about it because the Twitter sphere comes back and goes, "You said they were going to go undefeated." No, I asked the question: is my prediction they're going to go undefeated? No, I'm not. They're not going to. I do not think they're going to go undefeated. If the question is, at what point do you think that they're more likely to go undefeated than not? Well, I'll tell you, go all the way out past Pittsburgh, right? But because getting to having to go Pittsburgh and Denver back to back on the road, I think is unlikely that late in the year, especially with where they stand record wise right now in the lead they've got. I think it's unlikely. So when are they likely to do? But that's not the question. The question is, when is it okay to talk about it? And I think for me, it's as a fan, 1-0. Right? You should,
0-0.
You should embrace it for as long as you can because it's fun and that's what it's about, being a fan. When you start talking about it as an analyst, I think certainly when you're the last team standing, it's okay to mention that question. And I think so much of what we do in our business is because a couple of chuckleheads are going to fire out some texts or tweets, or we're worried some other jackass in the media is going to be like, well, that dumbass was talking about him going undefeated. Yes, I talked about it. I didn't predict it. It's a relevant conversation when you are the last undefeated team in the NFL.
Let me ask you this: when the Eagles were undefeated last year, I think they were 8-0, right, or 7-0. They were pretty deep into
8,
it.
I believe. Yeah.
Did you think they were going to go undefeated?
No.
Was that something that you thought?
I don't think the Chiefs are going to go undefeated right now.
But that's what I'm saying. But why do you think that?
Why did I think the Eagles weren't?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, and I can lump the Chiefs in with this because no one's done it. No one's ever gone 20-0. We've only had a 17-0. No one's done it since a 14-game season in 1972. So just the overwhelming evidence of math is why I don't think they're going to do it. Now, if you want to talk about what are the flaws in the teams, I don't think this team is as flawed as the Eagles are because, one, their quarterback's better. Two, their coach is better. Three, their defense is better. So I think,
but these things weren't the case when they were undefeated. That showed up after the fact. That's what I'm saying.
No, I think Nick Sirianni's looked like a jackass going all the way back to the Super Bowl. And yes, it had not imploded, but I said at the time when he was taunting fans during the Super Bowl, I said, this is the biggest game of the man's career, and he is worried about the fans. His quarterback, who's 23 years old, has to tell him, hey, right here, focus here. That is a massive sign of problems, and it has been that way since.
What do you think the odds are that the Chiefs do go undefeated?
Oh, geez. I mean, I think I saw a line that the betting odds are 10-1. I think the real odds are more like 150 to 1.
150?
I think it's well beyond. I think it's at this point just because of injuries that happen in the
NFL.
NFL.
Less than 1%?
Yeah, but probably about.
That's what I put it at.
Probably about 100 to 1 maybe somewhere in that range. I mean,
I'm going to give. Let's ask our commenters. Let's ask our commenters to weigh in on the percentage chance. I think I give it like a 3 to 5% chance. And I bet if you actually like parlayed this in Vegas, first of all, you're not going to come up with 10 to 1. You're going to get a hell of a lot better odds than 10 to 1 for the better. But I think like 3% to run through. I mean, there's games I think they could be underdogs against Buffalo, and I mean in Vegas. I don't just mean like one of us picking against them. I mean, I think Vegas could have the Bills as favorites in a few weeks. It's not just that they have that gauntlet, like with having to play road games in Pittsburgh, and then the Denver looks at least defensively much improved. That's 3 games in like 10 days. Like that's going to be in
December
against physical defensive teams. Like that's going to be a tough stretch.
Well, we give the next topic is like who are the threats to beat this team? There's 2 ways to look at that. One, who are the threats to end the undefeated season? And I think the likely scenarios, most likely, I think would be at Bills, right, coming up on November 17th. So they've got the Bucs, Broncos, and then at Bills. I think the next one that people would point to is maybe versus Chargers because they are the number 1 defense in football right now, and Justin Herbert's playing well. So I think the Chargers are a game that people should take serious, even though it's in Kansas City. I'm not ready to put the Browns there. Versus Texans, I mean, I think they're backing up the bus when we see what they did against the Jets, but they've got a quarterback, right? And they're
a hurted receiver. You get Nico Collins back, things look a lot different.
They do look a lot different, but the Chiefs run a stretch of Texans at home. First of all, they finished with 3 out of 4 on the road, which is not their normal schedule. The NFL, for whatever reason, has really smiled. I know at times from the marketing department of the Chiefs, like Christmas Day games and 8-degree games are not easy to sell, but the Chiefs love it. Andy Reid loves it because he loves people having to come out in the elements, and they've kind of gotten that, whether it's just coincidence or not. But they are not getting it this year. 3 out of 4 on the road. You go at Browns, home for Texans, at Steelers, at Broncos, and from a purely undefeated standpoint, when you've got a 2-game cushion on everybody right now, there's a strong chance that they're going to be faced with the question of, do you sit or do you go for the undefeated season, right? And the Patriots went for it. Most teams, have not gone for it. I think, what was it? The Colts got all the way out to 13-0 and then started benching guys. Didn't win the Super Bowl, by the way, after they did that. So there's a lot of reasons.
The Colts were at 15-1. They sat players the last game and they could have been undefeated, right?
I mean, that's a different question, and I don't think we'll be talking about that question late in the season. But if you're undefeated, you got to try and stay undefeated because I think you risk losing some guys in the locker room if you throw a game when they're looking at something historic like that.
Yeah. But I'm telling you, teams haven't done that. The Colts didn't do it. Yeah. There have been teams that have had an opportunity and they start calling off the dogs at some point. Right. Usually it doesn't come to that. And you're right. We'll have that conversation when they get there. When they clinch the 1 seed and are undefeated, that's when you can have that conversation. Until then, it's just speculation.
Yeah, that's the thing of more import here is that ESPN analytics gives them like a 70% chance of getting the number 1 seed right now. I think Pro Football Focus is even higher. They're in the low 70s right now.
Wow.
I mean, we're 7 weeks into the season, and they have almost a 3-4 chance of being the number 1 seed. And they proved last year that perhaps and the whole NFL is proving this year that home field advantage is not what it used to be. But getting a bye is significant, especially when you look at the bottom of the AFC right now, and you've got teams like the Ravens sitting at potential 6 or 7. And so that's the importance of them being undefeated, is not can they stay undefeated the longest, of any team in recent memory. Can they go undefeated? You've got a really good chance of securing a first-round bye right now.
And it's also why that Buffalo game looms so large. It gets bigger by the week because people have looked at Buffalo's schedule to take a look at it and see how many losses they got coming left. They got 2 games right now against teams over 500. It's the Chiefs and Detroit. And they're in a division that is horrible. And so if the Chiefs lose to Buffalo, that's a lot of pressure on them to keep running the table after that, because all of a sudden Buffalo has a tiebreaker and 2 2-loss teams could end up playing a playoff game in Buffalo.
Yeah, and you're not kidding, Jeff. It's the Dolphins, Colts, then the Chiefs, 49ers, then the Rams, Lions, then Patriots, Jets, Patriots. That is not a difficult schedule for the Bills left.
You have to have a lead going into Pats, Jets, Pats for the Bills.
That's more than a kiss. That's a blowjob.
Do we get the R rating now on Apple Podcast?
There was no profanity there. I don't think. Listen, the one thing I will say, you are right. The Jets, I don't know if they're turning their season around with what they did last night. It was a good win for the Jets. They showed some signs. Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams hooking up. Garrett Wilson. I tend to not think so, but I think the Rams could be tougher. I mean, let's be honest. They're sitting at what? Are they 3-4? And just a half game out of their division. So they don't figure to be out of the mix. I don't know that anybody's going to run away and hide.
49ers too. 49ers will be tougher than they are right now.
Right. They're 4-4. So I do think that is a pretty rough stretch for the Bills. Chiefs, Niners. Is there a bye week?
There's a bye week sandwiched in there, though. Yeah. DVOA says it's the 6th easiest schedule remaining.
Okay. So, but the where you, as a fan, you got to root to try to get some clearance for the Chiefs is the stretch of Chiefs, Niners, at Rams, at Lions, because it ain't coming anywhere else. Right. I mean, Jeff's point is 100% valid.
Just yourself. I mean, just root for yourself to beat them, because that's a 3-game lead on everybody in the league.
It's a huge game.
Well,
it legitimately could decide the bye. Could be over by that point.
Pittsburgh still has to find a loss in there somewhere, but I think we feel like with their division that's going to come. But Pittsburgh is the one that also still has just 2 losses. All right, we still want to get to some of the timelines on some of the injuries. We also want to get to our friends at Key Cannabis.
Unlock a premium dispensary experience at Key Cannabis. Visit any one of our 12 Key Cannabis locations across Missouri for a huge selection of cannabis products and expert recommendations from Missouri's friendliest bud tenders. Quick service, convenient online ordering, drive-through pickup, and a fantastic loyalty program. Plus, Key Cannabis offers discounts for veterans, med patients, cannabis industry professionals, seniors, first responders, and students. Visit us in KC North, South KC, and Belton. Open 7 days a week, or shop online at keycannabis.com. Key Cannabis, open for premium cannabis experiences.
All new at Minsky's, world champion KC linebacker Drew Tranquil's game day gourmet pizza creation, the Tranquillo Crunch. Loaded up with the meats. Gotta have that protein. Sausage, capicola, ground beef, mozzarella, pepperoni, a dusting of Romano and oregano, plus the extra special Panko Crunch crust make up this pizza that's fit for a champion. Better yet, every Tranquillo Crunch pizza ordered this season benefits Operation Breakthrough. Use promo code PETRO3 for $3 off a large Tranquillo Crunch now through October 31st. The Tranquillo with Panko crust is available at all 17 KC Metro locations, only for this season. So make sure you get to Minsky's.
That for remembering to put things together. Forgot to put us back in. By the way, I will point out that the Tranquillo Crunch pizza, chef's kiss to our friends at Minsky's. They came up with a great one on that one. We've had it, I think 3 of them since they debuted him at my house. That is. Now I also have people over for the games, and that's a pickup for us. But the Tranquil, the pepperonis got a little extra kick. I highly recommend it. So grab it at Jerminski's, and don't forget the promo code Petro3. That works. I'm not afraid to use my own name for a promo code and save $3, but use that promo code Petro3 and save $3 on the Tranquil crust pizza. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we're hearing on Isaiah Pacheco, Sam, on a timeline for him. What do we think on when, based upon what Andy Reid's saying, based upon what he's practicing, when Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back in the mix?
Yeah, I mean, look, I asked Andy Reid about that on Wednesday, and it's like his least favorite topic is to ask when you ask him about guys' timelines. I mean, look, he always offers some optimism about these guys and how great they're attacking their rehab, and so we heard that about Pacheco and Omenihu. I think that we're looking at. I'm taking more signs than anything from the way they're using Kareem Hunt. Like, you don't use Kareem Hunt in this workhorse role. He's, to me, undoubtedly looked like he's had less burst these past couple of weeks after the workload that he's received. But I don't think you do that unless you know that Pacheco's right around the corner. And so I still think we're looking at sometime in late November when we're talking about him back. I did anticipate that we would perhaps see him open up that 21-day window off of IR where you're allowed to practice for 21 days before you return to the field. I had kind of anticipated that could perhaps be this week, and now I'm anticipating that it could be next week.
Yeah, Jeff, I think we're looking at Carolina. I don't think you're going to see him for Buffalo. I think we're looking at the game against Carolina is probably when you're going to see him landing, because I'm with Sam and just kind of the scuttlebutt that I'm hearing. I think it's going to be a little bit of time. So I think probably end of November. What are you thinking on what we're hearing for Pacheco, and what does it do for the team continuing to pound the ball with Kareem Hunt and not have Pacheco back in there?
Well, I for all the same reasons Sam just mentioned, I think when you're talking about, when that practice window opens up, it seems as if the timeline leads to being after Buffalo. You wouldn't want him to be in a situation where, as much as people want to believe these guys are like Avengers, you can just like have an injury and just heal up really fast and you're the same person. Like, you're talking about a major leg injury to a running back. It's not talking about a nose tackle or a guard. You're talking about somebody who is going to be trying to cut and explode and do all these things. So there has to be a comfort level there. And I imagine that the comfort level they have with Kareem Hunt so far gives them a little bit of a cushion. And so, yeah, I think I think the longer they wait, the better it is for him. They don't have to rush him back. They've been finding ways to get it done. But I am wondering what kind of player he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be 100% when he comes back. I think he'll be not a lot less, but he will be a lesser player.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. You agree on the lesser player part, Sam? I think he's one. I kind of agree with what you're saying, Jeff, that they're not going to rush him back. I think they're not going to rush him back to make sure he's 100%. But I don't know. Maybe this is one of those things like, yeah, you can play.
Yeah.
You're not going to be 100% till you get to the offseason.
Yeah. Well, you don't get hit in practice. I know that.
Yeah. And
you don't know how good he is until you start getting hit again.
I've never rehabbed from a broken leg, so I'm
Yeah.
I'm guessing here. Sam, you agree that that's what it's going to look like?
I don't think he's going to return to this role where he was getting like 18 carries in a game. I mean, I think he returns to he literally returns to a different backfield than the one he was leading. I mean, Kareem Hunt wasn't part of the equation whenever he was, leading that backfield. So I do think that they will bring him along more gradually than it's not this pressing situation that they had whenever we thought it would be whenever he left.
Yeah. What do we think about Charles Omenihu and a timeline on when he could be back? Jeff, you got a vibe on that?
I've always been less optimistic about that, just because of an ACL injury when it happened. I mean, this was really late into the season when it was the AFC Championship game he got hurt, which was almost February. And so, yeah, just again, a position where you're asking yourself to be in awkward positions and be explosive and to make cuts and taking on 300-pound guys. I think Josh Uche being here is a lot about what Charles Omenihu is at. Not just the Mike Dana part of it, the FAU part, but just got to have some assurance there because you don't know what you're going to get.
I think that's it. I think they're going to get him back, by December. right? Like I've heard some rumblings about Carolina maybe being a target as well. I think, Jeff, you hit on it. And Sam, the question is, what are you getting back, right? Like this is the one that I think really, this isn't just a bone healing. And once the bone is healed, like we're talking, to me, this is the one that are we going to be watching a one-legged player out there with the injury that he sustained?
Yeah, I
Von Miller.
think I mentioned that on Tuesday's podcast with the Joshua Uche news, is that you are going to get Omenihu back, but you can't just count that he's going to be the player that had 6 straight games with a sack late in the season. I mean, he was really productive for the Chiefs, but there's a big unknown. I mean, look at it this way. When guys get injured, like Najee Johnson got injured in the previous training camp, for example, and in this year's training camp, how many days did Najee Johnson miss of training camp with these other like injuries that are related to him, being less confident about his knee? I mean, he had to have people tell him, your knee is okay. You can play on this. And it still takes a while mentally to realize that. So guess what? He's got a hamstring injury. He's got, like a calf injury shortly during training camp. Like there's a mental grind here that you usually have the allotment of training camp to go through that, or, early season portion to go through that. He's returning potentially to a stretch run. I just don't like, he's not a guy you can plug. Nobody in that situation, I think, is a guy you can just plug in and say, hey, go be yourself.
Yeah. Kyle says Turk Wharton didn't look the same till 18 months after his, injury, which I think is a fair point.
Ask people in that locker room, and they'll tell you, why is Turk Wharton having such a good year? Well, last year he was still working his way back from an ACL injury.
Yeah, and Ben said, aside from Mahomes, why would anybody have confidence in the Chiefs training staff? Players rated them an F. Their history is sketchy at best. I will say Chris Jones stood at a podium and dropped an F-bomb live on the radio, saying, whoever gave them an F can go blank themselves. He says the training staff is great. So I bring that up. Listen, I don't know if it's great or not. I'm not in there. No one. I don't deal with the personnel.
It's his teammates. I mean, he's telling his teammates to F themselves. Then
listen, I've had management people tell me it's a couple of guys that were on the brink of being cut or were cut, and that's their spin. That's not accurate. This was 40 some players that collected get an F. They didn't cut 40 guys last year in November.
They got some bots going on there. Huh?
It is. Listen, it is absolutely an issue. Nobody wants to get an F on any grade that's out there. But it's also, I think we need to point out, they've been one of the healthier teams. And, one of the speculations is it's because that they don't baby them, that Andy's got marching orders to the training staff and it's to get their asses out on the field. And so, listen, whatever it's going to be. We'll see. I'm not here to try to, sell real hard on what the training staff is or isn't. Hollywood Brown, real quick on Hollywood Brown. Do we, they're hopeful that they're going to get him back. Anybody got any ideas on, I think maybe the end of the regular season? What do you hear, Sam?
Yeah, I think he could be back by like you just said, at the end of the regular season. I mean, that's kind of what I'm hearing. I think he's ahead of schedule on this second. Obviously went in and the bone wasn't healing correctly, had to have a surgery. Since that moment, they put a timeline on him, and I think he's ahead of that schedule. And I do think that puts him. Look, there's this Hollywood Brown example is the perfect example that there's unpredictability with injuries and when you're rehabbing from stuff. So saying, a guy that's been out for 4 months is going to be back on this exact date, that's impossible. But I do think they're looking at a very real possibility that they're having Hollywood Brown back in the equation by the end of the regular season.
So, Jeff, to double all the way back around to one of our initial topics about the undefeated season, getting Isaiah Pacheco back, getting Hollywood Brown back, getting Charles Omenihu back.
Undefeated, baby.
You've got to be just on board with this undefeated talk, right? With all this positivity.
Well, again, with Hollywood Brown, I'll believe it when I see it, just because I know how these things can go, as Sam said.
And we know how this player's gone before.
Exactly. We know how this player's gone. Again, you don't know what he brings to the table. Didn't see him for more than a couple downs in the preseason. It's a lot to ask. I mean, of anybody, even somebody who's a veteran. And so, do I think that? I think about the Ravens with Mark Andrews last year, and he got hurt and he came back in the playoffs. This is a guy who's a proven Pro Bowl player, spent all this time with the franchise, knows Lamar Jackson. And you saw what he offered in the playoffs. And in fact, it was more of a detriment because they really tried to do things with him to get him more involved. If Hollywood Brown comes back and he's like a spot player, I'd be fine with that. But I don't see him being more than that, because if they try to make him more than that, I think it could be a problem.
You may not know what you're getting with Hollywood Brown, but you always know you're getting the best with David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave, and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized, full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems? They've been making them disappear in KC since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your lot restriped today. A brightly striped lot will cut down on accidents and keep your lot as safe as possible. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, let's talk about Steve Spagnuolo. What are we looking at? Are we looking at the best assistant coach in the NFL, Jeff, when we talk about Steve Spagnuolo, the way this defense is playing?
All new at Minsky's World.
I'm having a day.
That's right. That's all right.
Subliminal messaging.
I could use a pizza right now. I'm sorry, Jeff. I apologize for the interruption. Go ahead.
No problem. No, I thought Brian Flores was.
Do it again, man.
That's right. It's the stars going again. And I think Ben Johnson has done a pretty good job in Detroit, but I have to give Spags his credit too. I mean, he certainly has done things. They're not going to be undefeated without the work he's been doing. I feel like this defense, while it is obviously a very good defense, it does not have the same amount of star power that you see in other places. And he's been so consistent with it. You know, there's a thing about Bill Belichick back when he was playing and when he coached in New England, people talked about how he could just plug guys in no matter what, because you knew what they had to do. And this defense is really assignment sound. And that's really a compliment to the coaching, and it means that you can keep this going for a long period of time. So, yeah, I think if he's not number one, he's pretty close to the top as far as assistant coaches go.
Yeah. Where do you put him, Sam?
Yeah, a lot of good ones this year. I mean, Jeff mentioned a couple. You know, an underrated one is Todd Monken's having a hell of a year as the offensive coordinator for Baltimore, just because of their record, but their record's because of their defense. Like, they're averaging, I think it's 50 more yards per game than any other team in the league right now. Like, there's a gap there. But Jeff hit on it with Spags is they signed nobody this offseason. No defensive free agents came into Kansas City this offseason. They lost their number one cornerback, a guy who was good enough that he was franchise tagged with a knee injury, and they still get a third-round pick back for him. And here they are, a top 5 defense. And they don't force a ton of turnovers, which I realize is part of the job of a defense, but also my point is, like, this is sustainability. Like, the way they're doing it is they just literally stop guys on three downs with a group that's not only lost some guys from last year, didn't add guys, but they faced adversity with injuries during this year as well. And so last year I thought they got to the point they did because there were so many rookies that were in their second or third year with Spags. And I think that's now what you're seeing is he's able to open up his playbook look, I mean, Joshua Uche was asked about Spags yesterday when he came to the podium, and he said, man, that playbook. Like, his first reaction is, that's not a playbook that I've seen before. And I don't think Spags was allowed to use that playbook for the first couple of years because he didn't think his guys knew it well enough. They interchanged so many players and personnel during those couple of years that I just think he didn't have the confidence as he could teach the guys. Now he's at that level to where when you bring in a Christian Roland Wallace, for example, in week 6, they're plugging into a system where everyone knows what they're doing. And that assignment suddenly becomes easier now. And so turning guys over becomes much easier now. And that's absolutely a credit to the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's been absolutely brilliant. You hit on it. I don't know what else you could say. I mean, and I would throw in, like, guys like Mike Pennell and Tershawn Wharton are undrafted, right?
Right.
Like it's not like this has been, he inherited 7 years of picking in the top 10 and with all defensive players. And it's like, there'd been a dunce in there and
so's Roland Wallace. 3 guys undrafted. That's a great point, Stren.
Yeah, I mean, and so which is a credit to the front office and their ability to find guys, but really the development side of things on defense. That was one of the things that Eric used to talk about. Who have the Chiefs really developed along the way on the defensive side? There's been great development on the defensive side. Let's talk a little bit about Patrick Mahomes in the MVP race. Does he deserve to be still, I think, third favorite on the betting odds? Jeff, does he deserve to be in the conversation for MVP?
No, but he's going to be there because he's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that's always going to be. It's like you're always going to pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl because they've proven that they can do it and do it pretty consistently. So, but no, I mean, I don't expect him to even be. He may not be in the top 6 or 7 the way the year's playing out because I think Josh Allen is making a pretty strong case, and if he keeps on this pace and the schedule plays for him, he should be in the front runner. Lamar Jackson obviously is going to be there. Jared Goff, surprisingly, is not getting as much love as he should, but he's leading an offense that is the best offense in the NFL, and they're probably going to end up with the top seed. And then you have the guys like C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels thrown in there. So it's a lot of guys who are already ahead of him that I don't see him because of his statistics overcoming them.
Sam, I wouldn't say he belongs at the top of any list, right? And I'm fine if somebody says, hey, he doesn't belong in the top 3. But as far as the conversation goes, as we talked about earlier, there's still 10 football games to be played. They are undefeated. I think he belongs in the conversation is how I'd put it. He doesn't belong up at the top right now, but he belongs in the conversation.
He absolutely should be in the conversation. The reason is because we're 7 weeks into the season and the odds are based on prediction. I mean, they're not a reflection of that he's had one of the best 7 weeks that anybody has. It's based on where he could finish. And I think you'd be a fool not to have Patrick Mahomes still on your list of guys that could finish there. I said this before the season. I think there's a couple things working in his favor when you talk about MVP. One is his team record, and voters put more weight into that than they should. The second thing is I think it's going to be in voters' minds what he did last year with a supporting cast that was depleted. It's going to be in voters' minds that supporting cast was further depleted by Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice injuries. Voters are going to it's just broadcast so frequently when the Chiefs miss a weapon that I think voters are going to be more aware of it than they might be when another guy's injured on another team. And so I think that's going to play in to help him at the end of the season. But the reason he is where he is right now is just because of the projection of where he could finish.
I think Jeffy's also in the conversation because maybe one of the guys who's been the most dynamic is Lamar Jackson, who's already got 2 awards. They gave it to last year, and then he went kaput against Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship game. And I don't think that's fair. It's a regular season award that should have no bearing on it. But that's in the voters' minds. We've given this guy, he's 27 years old, and we've given him 2 MVPs, and he's yet to make a Super Bowl. How good? And then you hear all the pushback when Patrick Mahomes gets there, Chiefs fans and other people saying, "Oh, wow, yeah, guess what? Who's the MVP now?" I think that resonates with the voters that they don't like looking wrong.
Well, I think 2 things. One, knowing a lot of people who vote on this stuff, it doesn't go from year to year. And really, the bar is so high for Mahomes now in terms of production that if you're a national voter, and these people don't spend nearly as much time looking at their stuff as you might think, they're saying, oh, this is a guy who in his MVP year was throwing for 4,800, 5,000 yards, 40, 50 touchdowns, and now he's got more interceptions than touchdowns. The narrative about Mahomes isn't that he became a lousy player, it's that he's not having a great year. And so the longer that goes on, the more it's going to affect his chances. Lamar Jackson, I think the biggest argument against him winning it would be Derrick Henry. That he's had a bigger impact on their success. But again, I think it's going to be either Jared Goff or Josh Allen, just based off the narrative. Josh Allen came in this year without Stephon Diggs, with lesser players, and he's got 1 turnover, 1 interception or something like that, 1 fumble, lost fumble. And Jared Goff, again, is leading an offense that's doing amazing things against pretty good defenses. So I just think that's the way it goes. I think Mahomes is the best player in the NFL. Everybody would give you that. But the problem with being that is that if you're not playing the best, people not ding you pretty hard.
Yeah, that's a fair point. All right, let's get to our predictions. Sam, why don't you lead us off? What do you got for this Chiefs-Bucs game?
Well, the thing I look at with these two teams, first of all, like I said, Baker Mayfield's playing good football. I think Patrick Mahomes has played really good football a week ago, but both of them have really good running games. I mean, the Chiefs are first in the NFL in success rate and run. I think Tampa's top 3, and so therefore Tampa's first in the NFL in third downs. The Chiefs are second in the NFL in third downs. That's because their running games have put their passing games in really good situations throughout the year. So look at which defense is better equipped to stop that. The Chiefs are second in the NFL in defending the run and yards per carry. Tampa is terrible at it, and their defense has been really bad all year. Mm-hmm. They are second. They've allowed the third most yards per carry, despite having the second most stacked boxes in the NFL. They are trying to defend the run, and they still can't do it. And so I have a harder time figuring out how Tampa can stop the Chiefs than I do how the Chiefs can stop Tampa. And so, Soren, last week, this was you on it. I'm going to say that they break the 30-point mark for the first time during this 13-game win streak, and I've got the Chiefs 31-20.
All right, this should be interesting. 31-20.
It's going to be amazing if you predict this every week, and the first week that I predicted is the week they hit 30.
I should have gone first. Jeff, what do you see?
I see a game where if the Bucs want a chance to win, it's probably by controlling time possession. So I see them trying to do more things to keep the ball away from the Chiefs. That's not going to be an easy task, as Sam just said, with the Chiefs defense, but I feel like it's going to be a tight game, and I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I'll go Chiefs 21-16.
21-16. All right.
And maybe not as close. Maybe a late touchdown by the Bucs makes it closer, but I don't think it's going to be a suspenseful game by any means.
I think you got one of the numbers right. I think 16 is correct on that number. So I will give you that. 16 for the Bucs is right. But as Tommy said, unleash the fury. Come on, Soren. 33-16 Chiefs.
You did it last week, didn't you?
Yeah, I was going to say last week and the week before and the week before.
It's always fury.
It's not caged.
33. Yeah. Matt is tracking it. I have picked
There's no leash.
Correctly. Let's be clear. The only one of us that has picked every game correctly.
Yes. Once the Chiefs record is your record.
It is.
Yeah, that's right.
100%. And this is where the beatdown happens, right? I think it could have come last week. It didn't. The divisional game, I should have factored more into that. This is not a divisional game. I think the Chiefs defense will bottle up the Bucs, and the Bucs defense sucks. It's 30th in the NFL. It's 29th against the pass. They don't stop the run. I think Patrick Mahomes has a day. They're not going to get as much pressure on him as other teams have. 33-16, and maybe I'm selling them short. What do you think about that? There you go. That's my prediction. Listen, we're always brought to you by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. You can give Dave and his crew a call right now at 816-781-7331, helping you with all your insurance needs. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best, with free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Find our friends at Gann online at GannAsphalt.com. Key Cannabis, go to KeyCannabis.com right now and make sure that you are getting the very best at Key Cannabis. Unlock premium dispensary experience at Key Cannabis. And then, of course, our friends at Minsky's Pizza. That Tranquillo Pizza, it is here. Tranquillo, I believe is how they want to pronounce it. I say Tranquillo. You can save $3 when you use the promo code Petro3. Use that promo code Petro3 and get the Tranquillo Crunch Pizza at your neighborhood Minsky's. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, or Sam McDowell from the Kansas City Star, I'm Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.